AI requires a lot of compute power, and the cost for your AI workloads can spiral. That is, unless you're running on OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. This was the cloud built for AI, a blazing fast, enterprise-grade platform for your infrastructure, database apps, and all of your AI workloads.
Right now, Oracle can cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to OCI. Minimum financial commitment and other terms apply. Offer ends March 31st. See if you qualify at oracle.com/WSJTech. Oracle.com/WSJTech.
Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, live on the air in 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com. And yes, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, KBC.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. Mixed finish for stocks today with the Dow closing a bit lower. Stocks, though, on pace to post weekly gains. It's been a wild week with tariffs, of course, in focus and the tech sector. Earnings, of course, as well in the spotlight. The Dow pulling back 126 points today. The S&P 500 up 22. The NASDAQ gained 100 points. Trade war jitters starting the week this week after President Trump announced 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada. Though the president implemented a pause on those measures, China did see a new 10% trade tariff imposed on imports. Still, the three main averages on track to just be below record high territory here, with the Dow and S&P 500 now just about 0.5% away from closing highs, and the NASDAQ just about 2% below its most recent high close, which was in the middle of December. Taking a look at some of the movers today, shares of Trump Media and Technology snapping a 3-day skid today. The company outlined new steps for new financial products themed America First. They made the announcement today. The company, which operates President Trump's social media platform Truth Social, said new ETFs will be branded Truth.fi. F-I, that's the name of Trump Media's new financial services division, announced on January 29th. Long-dated government treasury yields finished higher for the first time in 4 trading sessions today, following the latest news on jobless claims, which showed the unemployment lines did get a bit longer over the past week. The yield in the 10-year note rose to 4.44%. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said today the Trump administration was focused on longer benchmark rates rather than what the Federal Reserve will do with short-term interest rates. He said President Trump is not calling on the Fed to lower short-term rates, but he wants to see benchmark Treasury yields come down and hopes to achieve that with faster economic growth, a trim in government spending, lower inflation, and the expectation is if that all happens, yields will come down. The Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, meanwhile, will testify before Congress next week, the first time he's answered questions from lawmakers since July. That announcement from the Federal Reserve this afternoon. Powell is set to testify before the Senate Banking Committee on Tuesday and then the House Financial Services Committee the following day. Looks like oil futures did pull back today, after an initial rise, after a hefty rise in last week's oil inventories and uncertainty around the tariff disputes, helping to weaken the outlook for crude oil demand. Also, the latest developments in the Middle East, despite all the big announcements there, we're seeing lower oil prices, something we're following very closely. Right now, crude oil futures hovering just below $71 a barrel. As you heard at the top of the hour, a federal judge temporarily blocking the Trump administration's proposed buyout for federal workers until at least Monday, giving an initial win to labor unions that sued to stop that move. Even as the program was stayed by the courts, more than 60,000 federal employees have already accepted the buyout offer, according to the White House. It's a nervous time again for small businesses because of something that came into law during the Biden administration, the so-called Corporate Transparency Act, impacting about 32 million small businesses. Basically requires small business owners to provide personal information for a huge new government database that can be accessed by intelligence agencies, apparently without any kind of court order. And it's just for small businesses, not corporations. We're going to be learning more about this later this hour. The National Federation of Independent Business is leading the charge for the full repeal of that law. I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it later this hour with Jeff BRABANT, Vice President of Federal Government Relations for the National Federation of Independent Business. The restaurant business, meanwhile, getting hit again with many headwinds, including the fire disaster here in Los Angeles, labor issues, upward pressure on labor costs, and food inflation. Homelessness and crime also continue to impact restaurants in the Los Angeles area. I'll be speaking about that with the one and only Angela Marsden, the owner of the Pineapple Hills Saloon and Grill in Sherman Oaks, and a fantastic small business advocate here in Southern California. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, the whole works now. Joining us live, Jonathan HOENIG, Fox News contributor, portfolio manager at Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund, and the author of the book Price is Primary, How to Profit with Any Asset in Any Market at Any Time. Jonathan HOENIG, good afternoon to you, sir.
Frank, great to be with you. Good afternoon.
Wonderful to have you with us. Obviously, lots of big news hour by hour these days, and certainly a lot to talk about here with the market reaction to the tariffs news, the DeepSeek news just less than 2 weeks ago, and earnings parade continuing, oil moving lower, gold hitting record highs, Bitcoin all over the place. What's your reaction to the latest news here?
Well, Frank, this week it's been all about tariffs. And as you've often said, the market hates uncertainty. And the tariffs have introduced a huge level of uncertainty into not just the U.S. economy, but the global economy. And look, President Trump, I believe, has some very ambitious goals here about stopping the flow of drugs and undocumented migrants, example. What's unclear, Frank, is whether the tariffs are actually going to accomplish that. Tariffs are import taxes. They're paid by American importers. And I've seen some data this week, Frank, that's rather frightening. The Budget Lab at Yale said the average U.S. household could lose the equivalent of about $1,100 in income from Trump's new tariffs, and it could add something on the order of $3,000 to the cost of a new car. So, I mean, we all remember there is no such thing as a free lunch. I believe Milton Friedman said that. So someone's going to pay for tariffs, Frank, and the data is starting to sum up.
And it will maybe impacting companies' bottom lines as well as consumers. The president is using tariffs as a tool to accomplish various policy goals, and obviously hoping also to pump up the economy. So in the aggregate, based on all of the executive orders we've seen, making the country more business-friendly, putting America first and all of that, what do you see ahead for both the economy and for the markets?
Well, some disruption at least to get-go. I mean, Frank, this stat is amazing. 99% of shoes are imported. 99% of shoes. So you better, get your cobbling degree handy, Frank. We're going to need some cobblers here pretty soon. I mean, given the fact what kind of a change there's going to have to be. I mean, something on the order of 1 in 5 cars come from Mexico. 2/3 of vegetables are imported from Mexico or Canada. So there's going to be some pretty massive supply disruptions. But, as you pointed out, as soon as the president enacted the tariffs, they, in fact, unenacted it. They took them off, at least for a period of time. And the thing is, Frank, think if you're a business leader, putting down $1 billion or $5 billion plant. Where are you going to put it? In Mexico, in the U.S., and where can you put it? I mean, these are major questions that I think have many business owners kind of just putting their hands in their pockets saying, let's wait and see what the policy is going to be before we put real money to work.
Very interesting about the shoes. So we might see pumped up kick prices if the tariffs do ultimately kick in. So we're going to be watching that one very, very closely. We did hear from the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, very interesting comments from the new Treasury Secretary today, clarifying what as he understands it, what President Trump wants on interest rates, saying that he doesn't want the Fed to lower benchmark rates necessarily, but he's looking to the bond market for relief here. And we have seen the yield in the 10-year note pull back today. That's the one that impacts the fixed rate mortgage rates, which impacts real estate. What do you see ahead for rates here?
I would say, to quote my great-grandmother on rates, nish to hen, nish to hair. Frank, I can't tell her what's really this way or that way. The most interesting price action has been as the Fed's been cutting rates have been going up. I mean, they've gone up over a full point. At the same time, you're seeing gold hit new all-time highs. I'm very bullish on platinum, Frank. PPLT is the ETF that I own for platinum. Platinum and gold, I think, are breaking out. So I'm seeing a lot of signs that perhaps inflation's not just dead. It might be really ready to run. Corn, soybeans, wheat, a lot of the agricultural commodities are running now. Natural gas has been running now. So I look back to history and I wonder, are we on that second half of the 70s where you actually really see interest rates, commodities, and inflation skyrocket? I'm not a Cassandra, but I'm just looking at history. And Frank, I don't see the spending cuts. If Trump was really cutting the size of government, if Doge was cutting the trillions we've been promised, maybe I would think otherwise. But I'm betting on inflation, and I think gold, platinum, and rates are all telling the story.
On the Air Live with Jonathan HOENIG. God bless your grandmother and imparting that great wisdom on all of us here this afternoon. And gold, you're right, kissing record highs this week, right now at around 2,880 and change. We see silver, by the way, getting closer to $33 an ounce. Looks like it hit a new high for the year here. And platinum, which you noted, right now hovering at $1,023.20, up about a dollar today. And, of course, there was a time, I'm sure you remember, when platinum was a lot more expensive than gold. And look, we got gold at $2,880 and platinum at $1,022. What do you see ahead for platinum here?
Platinum was called the rich man's gold. You remember that one, Frank? Because platinum, as you said, platinum is it's an interesting story. It is 8 times more rare than gold, yet it is trading at less than half the price. This is an asset that used to trade north of $2,000 an ounce in 2008. Part of its use is catalytic converters. And look, as the EV craze took off, the price of both platinum and palladium fell off because there was less use for EVs. Now, this is no comment on EVs, but we're just seeing commodity prices across the board, leap up to, in many cases, record and all-time highs. Gold is certainly leading the charge. But I am, do your own due diligence, Frank. But as I said, I do like platinum, PPLT, and I've seen the stats adjusted for inflation. Platinum now around $1,000 an ounce should be around $3,000 an ounce. So from my mouth to God's ear, as they say,
should be.
We'll have to see. We'll do your own due diligence. But
yep.
In these periods of inflation, Frank, sometimes prices go up higher than we can ever believe.
Right, and look what happened with gold, and nobody was talking about it. It quietly hit all-time highs, so now everybody's talking about it, and a lot of people pile in. That's just human nature. When they hear things are at record highs, that gets people attention. Similarly, we see that happening with in the crypto space, turning to digital, so-called digital gold now here. Jonathan HOENIG, we see a Bitcoin taking a wild ride recently, despite the administration's strong support of crypto, with the crypto czar holding a news conference this week. We saw Bitcoin down to around 91,000, then it popped back above 100,000. Now it's around 96,000. What are your thoughts on the crypto moves we've seen?
I've taken some positions, Frank, in crypto for the first time. Well, I shouldn't say that for the first time, but recently for the first time. And it's in this ether. And actually, Frank, I've short some of it sold some of it short. Ticker symbol is ETHA. And this is, the crypto they call it ether. And do your own due diligence. But it's really been one of the laggards, Frank. It hasn't been as strong as Bitcoin. And the thing is, people often gravitate toward the laggards because they say, I'll buy the laggard. I think it'll catch up. But oftentimes the laggard is leading the entire complex lower. So you want to bet against the laggard. Just like if you were picking teams at a baseball, you'd pick the strongest people. You wouldn't pick the weak. So I'm betting against the weakest link. I'm shorting ETHA. Do your own due diligence, but bet against Ether. This could be the beginning of the cryptos finally starting to crack.
All right, so ETHA, that's the ETFs. It sounds like a New Yorker saying ether, right? Is the is the symbol ETHA? All right, so we got that one. We can remember that one. Now you mentioned gold and platinum, and now any other specific places where you are putting money now and/or taking it off the table?
Some of the more surprising stories, Frank, we've been hearing about. Europe has been terrible. Well, look at some of the European stocks. They've done amazingly well. EUFN is an ETF of European financials. Over the last year, it's up 26%. So I always like these places where, the vibe is, that's terrible, but the price action is doing really well. So one I like, Frank, is ENOR. That is an ETF that tracks Norway, ENOR. And it's definitely more of a value-oriented, tilted towards some natural gas and oil. And I'll throw one else out for you, which is Africa, AFK. This is an ETF that tracks basically the best of the continent as well as you can, primarily South Africa. So it's allocated to gold, some gold, but also banking. And I just think now's the time, Frank, to sidestep the clown show, which is American politics, and focus on the growth going on. I mean, there's still too many people around the world have never, used a cell phone, had a nice toilet, had Netflix. There's a lot more growth for this world to have. So I'm betting on some of those emerging markets in 2025.
On the Air Live with Jonathan Hoenig. Getting back to Europe, concerns among some of the economies there with the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, and a lot of focus of attention on energy there and what's happened since that war started. Anything else getting your attention in Europe at this point?
Well, there is a European energy stock I actually like. It is, again, domiciled in Norway, EQNR. Frank, dividend yield of 12% and a PE ratio of 7%. Now, do your own due diligence, but, it's such a defensive tenor as against putting that money into something like, an AI and, an AI play, Adobe or NVIDIA, that's trading at 30, 40, 50, 60 times earnings. These are legitimate countries. My only hope for these terrible areas of conflict, whether it be, in Russia and Middle East, I mean, please let us have peace in this new year. And these companies can really facilitate that. So EQNR is one that I like, and it's trading at such a relative valuation, Frank, that I think you have a lot of downside protection. All
right. And given what's going on with tariffs and the tech war that's unfolded here with China, would you touch anything China at this point?
Yeah, there is a China small cap. I mean, it's so funny. China's become a bad word here in the States, Frank, and it's too bad because, some of our best years recently were also some of China's best years because trade is win-win. That's what's so frustrating about this notion of, well, who really wins on trade? We're getting screwed on trade. Trade is win-win. And yes, China benefited from making a lot of goods over the years, the 60s, 70s, 80s that Americans bought, and Americans benefited. Frank, we always used to joke about we used to wait 6 to 8 weeks to have something delivered. And thanks to this amazing supply chain, you get it delivered the same day via drone. I mean, this is that global supply chain. So don't count China out at all. In fact, there's a small cap. I'm frantically searching for the ETF, but check out a small cap ETF.
That must be ECNS?
That is ECNS. Put it on your list, do your own diligence. But part of being a contrarian, Frank, is doing something that other people would say, oh, that seems crazy. What are you talking about? China's come on, China, you're with, it seems a little crazy now. So let price be your guide and put some of these emerging markets on your shopping list in 2025.
Yeah, you just reminded me also that the German DAX has hit a record high with hope that something will fall into place for a deal to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. So that's certainly noteworthy here.
Even as the German economy, I believe, Frank, is officially in another year of recession.
Yep.
Which is exactly why you ignore any calls of recession. The price is primary. That's the whole nature of it. You watch price, do not listen to the economic reports. And, that's part of why I'm encouraged about a lot of these emerging markets, Frank. And a lot of the expectations are very, very low. As against areas like the U.S. AI companies, Meta, I believe, has been up for 13 straight days. NVIDIA still is up 100 some. Yeah, so I mean, to me, the word is out. But when I try to pound the table on Italy, EWI, it's trading at half the price it traded in 2005. And I think so much of the great technology and advancement will be felt in the countries where, ironically, the advancement wasn't even pioneered.
Well, we're going to have a feeling we're going to have a lot more to talk about. Wish we had more time now, Jonathan, but we'll have to stop there. Always fantastic to speak with you and always appreciate your time. Jonathan HOENIG, Fox News contributor and Fox Business contributor as well, portfolio manager at Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund. And check out his book, Price is Primary, How to Profit with Any Asset in Any Market at Any Time. Jonathan, wish you a great evening, and thank you very much for coming to the line this afternoon.
And Frank, I'm wishing you the best of goodbyes.
Appreciate that very much, and we will continue now on 790 KBC. 790 KBC welcomes. Want to take a guess? Yep, Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons with Straight No Chaser coming to the Greek Theater September 6th. Something to look forward to. Tickets on sale Friday, tomorrow at Ticketmaster.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-795-2222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show if you're caller number 9. Call right now, 1-888-795-2222. Tickets furnished by Nederlander Concerts. Stocks posting a mixed finish today with the Dow pulling back 126 points to 44,748. The S&P 500 gaining 22 at 6,083. NASDAQ up 100 at 19,792. Gold hovering near an all-time high right now at $2,880.50 an ounce. Silver also been popping lately, up 6 cents to $32.69. And platinum, which was mentioned earlier, right now at $1,022.60. The price of oil at $70.53 a barrel at the moment. The volatility index, the VIX index today, pulling back 2%. Bitcoin's wild ride continues this week, down about 300 now at 96,629. Ethereum down 18 at 26.89, and Doge at 25 cents. The Magnificent One, NVIDIA, rebounding a bit today, up nearly $4 at 128.68. And now the latest news on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Good afternoon. Small businesses continue to be under pressure here in the Los Angeles area. The restaurant business especially getting hit again with many headwinds, including, of course, the fire disaster here in Los Angeles, labor issues, upward pressure on labor costs, as well as food inflation. Homelessness and crime also continuing to impact restaurants in the Los Angeles area. And joining us live now is Angela Marsden, the owner of the Pineapple Hill Saloon and Grill in Sherman Oaks, an amazing advocate for small businesses here as well as the restaurant business in Los Angeles. You may recall it was Angela Marsden who spoke out during the COVID shutdowns and got national attention. Angela Marsden, so elated to have you with us here this afternoon.
Hey, Frank, how are you? How are you doing?
Okay, I hope 2025 is treating you and your team there well so far. I know you are keeping us well informed as to what's happening in the restaurant business. So take it from the top and
Frank,
give us your view of things here at the moment.
As always, I have to tell you thank you, because you are one of the very few people in this town that give a voice to the small businesses, because our city council members don't care and our mayors don't care. Okay, I lived in the Palisades. And before I even go on to talk about the devastation that's happening to the businesses that were not burned down, I want to send my love and my heart to the small businesses that were lost in the fires. Cafe Vita, I enjoyed it all the time with my sons. Spruzzo's, Palisades Garden Cafe, those places are gone. Nobody can compare to what they have lost and how long it will take them to rebuild, if they can rebuild. Because what are they rebuilding to? There's no community up there because of incompetence, because of not having water, because of having only 5 fire trucks. But the reality is, there's a devastation that's happened to our city, and I hope people start to wake up, because we are going to have a second devastation when it comes to the small businesses. The restaurants, during the week of the fire, the restaurants around the fire zone or outside, their business dropped 80-90%, and some of them are still running at 65%. I myself am losing 30%, which doesn't seem like a lot when you say 30%, but when you realize how small our margins are and how the restaurants that are still here, do you know how many restaurants we lost because of the year-long strikes with the entertainment industry? The entertainment industry feeds LA. So we should help the entertainment industry. We should give them more tax breaks so that our economy can get going. But I have a friend that lost his restaurant last year because he couldn't survive through the strikes. We went through COVID. We went through Omicron. We went through homeless attacks, homeless coming in and throwing dishes at our customers and threatening us And insurance. Our insurance is through the roof. What do you think it's going to be after these fires for small businesses? My insurance, you've heard me gripe about it for over a year, could almost put me out of business. And that's how small the margins are. And now we are looking at the devastation. I'll tell you, there are other restaurant owners on Tuesday morning, right? The owner of Gorilla Tacos and a few others went down to advocate for the restaurants. And the reality is they're saying, listen, you're talking about everything, but you're not talking about the small businesses and the hits that they're taking right now. Now, it's not all about us, but this is the devastation to come out of the devastation. It's insane how it's going to put several people out of business. More businesses are going to go. You have half the town burnt down, and they don't talk about it. They don't acknowledge it. It's crazy. I want to tell you, I was reading an article. UCLA Anderson School of Management did some projections and forecasts. The loss of wages of local businesses and employees is going to total $297 million. That's just projected in 2025. I think that's so far off, because what people don't understand is the small businesses that are losing 60% right now. I've talked to several in Valley Inn. Sophia is suffering. Many restaurants in Studio City, all their sales are worse than mine. I mean, I'm lucky that I'm down 30%, but it's enough to put me out of business. I'm struggling. Like, it's insane, the massive impact and effect. And it affects the entertainment industry. In the entertainment industry, we love them, and they keep our restaurants full and busy. But they have nothing going on. They're not even working. I don't even know. Nobody even knows, are the projects going to stay here in L.A.? Like, is it going to restart? We were seeing this breath of wind right before the fires, where it's like those of us who made it through all of this was like, oh, my gosh, I see the light at the end of the tunnel. The entertainment industry is going to pick up. LA is going to be booming and hustling, and everything's going to be okay. And then we get hit with the fires that should have never happened. The fires that happened because we elected people that don't know how to do their job. Gavin Newsom, who I tried to put out of office, who I almost lost everything, going up and down California, trying to tell people how incompetent, how evil, how he totally scams us every time. Isn't it funny that there's been a state of an emergency almost the entire time he's been in office so that he can funnel money and scam things? He does not care about us. And I don't know how much more people need to see, but when you see empty fire hydrants and storage waters empty, you see people using purses to put out fires that should have been prevented. I mean, seriously, I don't know. The small businesses, we are going to lose a ton more now. A ton more are going to go out of business. I don't know what the landscape's going to look like. You know, we're holding out for the Olympics. We're holding out for Super Bowl. I don't know. I'm first of all, I'm heartbroken. I read the article on the small businesses that were lost at Altadena. Some of them had no insurance because they couldn't afford the fire insurance. It would have tripled their premiums. So they've literally lost everything. I know homeowners have lost everything, you know, and then the death and destruction that comes even after that because the economy isn't going to be there. There's no jobs. Like, I don't understand what it's going to take to get these people out of office. Like, can't we try something new? And Rick Caruso, Frank, I backed him, and many small businesses did. We stood behind him, and we worked hard to try to get him elected because he was smart, he was intelligent, he's invested in this city, and guess whose property is still standing in the Palisades unscathed? Rick Caruso's. Why? Because he knew that he had to have a backup plan, because he knew how bad things were. I pray for LA. You know, I pray for LA. I love LA. I love the people of LA. I love the diversity. I love the creativity. I love the small business culture of LA, but they have decimated us from COVID to Omicron to homeless to, you know, restaurants being robbed and nobody in jail for it, you know, to fires. Now half of our town burns down. And I always said, the small businesses, we are the canary in the coal mine. And we've been screaming at the rooftop at Nithya Raman. Mayor Bass met with her personally, holding meetings with small businesses over and over for 2.5 years. I stopped that small business meeting 6 months ago because most of the businesses that were in it were out of business, moved out of state, and the ones that were there said they don't care about us. No matter what we say on this call, Angela, no matter what we do, they don't care about us. And it's the truth. And that's the other thing that Avel, who is the founder of Gorilla Tacos, brought up when he went to city council is why are you not mentioning the devastation that's happening to the business community right now? You never, ever do it. And when I met with a representative from Nithya Raman's office, when they were asking me to please restart the business, call again, and, how can we get businesses more involved? I said to him directly, I said, I'll tell you what, I'm not doing another thing for this call until Nithya Raman and Mayor Bass does a press conference that's not about anything but the small businesses. Free their sales tax, give us grants for security so we can keep our customers safe. If you want to do your trial with the homeless for the next 20 years, don't leave us and my fellow community members as guinea pigs. Pay for our security. Show us that you care. Do something that matters, and they don't. They don't listen. And
God bless you.
Not
God bless you,
surprising
Angela.
to me, Frank.
Remember during the campaign, during one of the debates, Mayor Bass said that she was going to appoint somebody to handle vice mayor for the economy. I think she said it. And Rick Caruso, I don't need to appoint a vice mayor for the economy. That was one of the most memorable moments of the campaign. Absolutely heartbreaking, Angela. What's happened?
What we're going
we
through,
wish
it's
all the
hard,
strength in the
Frank,
world to get through this.
It's hard. It's hard to even come on and say anything. But I know all the small businesses are hurting, and I know the people that have lost their homes and their businesses. We can't even compare to that, and my heart goes out to that, to all of LA.
Keep it going, Angela, to continue to tell it like it is, and we'll have an open line to you. Angela Marsden, as always, wish we had more time here, and hopefully we'll have a chance to speak again soon. Angela Marsden, the owner of Pineapple Hill Saloon and Grill in Sherman Oaks. Please visit her restaurant there in the Valley in Sherman Oaks, an amazing advocate for small businesses throughout Southern California, especially the restaurants. Angela, God bless you, and thank you very much for joining us here again today.
God bless you, Frank. Thank you.
Out to the freeways now, 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good afternoon. We just heard Angela Marsden, the owner of the Pineapple Hill Saloon and Grill here in Southern California, laid on thick when it comes to issues facing small businesses here. Another one that we didn't even get a chance to talk about is something that came into law during the Biden administration, the so-called Corporate Transparency Act, which impacts about 32 million small businesses. It basically requires small business owners to provide personal information for a new government database that can be accessed by intelligence agencies, apparently without a court order, and it's just for small businesses, not big corporations. The National Federation of Independent Business is leading the charge for the full repeal of this law. And let's bring in Jeff Brabant now, the Vice President of Federal Government Relations for the National Federation of Independent Business, which happens to be the voice of small business in the United States. Jeff Brabant, thank you very much for coming to the line live with us here this afternoon. Hope you can hear me, Jeff. I want to take it from the top and tell us what we need to know about this. Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
So this is a really burdensome regulation for small businesses. And the one unique thing to know about this is that this only affects businesses with 20 or fewer employees and less than $5 million in revenue. It's really unusual for Congress to decide, hey, let's pass a burdensome regulation that only affects small businesses and let's exempt the big businesses. So kind of how we got here is that Congress said, well, here's a problem. People use shell companies to do bad things to launder money. How do we get after this? Well, let's make every small business in America register with a national intelligence agency and prove, hey, we're not money launderers. So if you want to open up a small business, you now have to prove with the National Intelligence Agency, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and register with them the driver's license information, the business address of not only the owners of your business, but anyone with substantial control of the business. So if you have you open a restaurant tomorrow and you have a restaurant manager who has some control over the day-to-day operations, that person needs to register with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. And it's one thing to have a one-time registration requirement, but if that information you provide ever changes, you get a new manager, you have 30 days to notify them. And if you don't notify them, you can go to jail for 2 years and face up to $10,000 in fines. And that's the scary thing. They're estimating there's going to be 32 million small business owners that have to comply with this thing in year one. And those 32 million small business owners are going to be on the hook for the life of their business to update this information.
What is the status? Is this enforced now? If not, when will it be going into effect?
So it was supposed to go into effect at the start of the year. Right now, it's going through the courts. Luckily, there's been FinCEN under the new administration has said, all right, we have a pause, we have a timeout until the courts figure out this thing is constitutional. NFIB and some other business groups have sued on the basis that this violates a couple constitutional rights. One, the search and seizure. There's often very private information that should never get out there that small business owners have to hand over to the federal government. And the question is, well, if there's no probable cause, if there's no subpoena, why does the federal government have access to this on such a basis? So it's also very burdensome, which is concerning. So right now there's a pause, but the courts can decide any day that, okay, this is constitutional, you have to apply, at which point we would expect business owners to have about 30 days. So we're trying to make sure business owners are aware. If you're out there, you're a small business owner, and you've probably heard about this in the last few months because you've probably been hearing about it from your CPA. I recommend call your member of Congress, tell them to co-sponsor the Repealing Big Brother Overreach Act. There's a bill in each chamber that would repeal this because, as I say, this is a real burdensome issue for small business owners. It's a privacy concern. There's a concern for hacks. If you have to give a copy of your driver's license to a federal database, what happens to that information if it gets hacked? And then, of course, you get the concerns that, well, you have a federal database with more or less unfettered access to the personal ownership information of 32 million small business owners. What are federal, state, and local law enforcement going to do with this information? There's always concerns about misuse, and are you going to layer on additional penalties for crimes that had nothing to do with this? We're going to have the CIA, the FBI, the IRS, all with access to this information.
Well, that is a huge story, so thank you for being a strong advocate for all of these small businesses, standing tall for small businesses here in the United States, here in Southern California as well, at this critical time, as we just heard from a small business owner here just before you came on the air with us, Jeff. Jeff Brabant, the Vice President of Federal Government Relations for the National Federation of Independent Business. Thank you very much for sharing that important information with us here this afternoon.
Thanks for having me on.
The Dow pulling back, 126 at the bell today. S&P 500 up 22, NASDAQ up 100. Tomorrow we'll be getting the jobs report for the month of January. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon. Mottek on Money on 790 KBC.